What's more likely for the Bruins' top six vacancy, an external hire or an internal promotion?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All summer long, FanDuel is hooking up customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. As a reminder, or if you're new to the podcast, I am a lifelong Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years now. I was a full-time hockey news writer for The Score and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. And today we're talking about a pretty big hole on Boston's right side in the top six. We've talked about the additions that they have made in Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, addressing the center position and depth on defense. But there's also been some pretty significant departures as well, namely Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen, both of whom played in the top six during the playoff run and the series against the Florida Panthers. So who do we have to step in? You could really argue right now the Bruins roster as it stands, pending training camp and some battles to be fought there, they really only have 5 top 6 forwards. You can pencil the line of Pavel Zacha, Elias Lindholm, and David Pastrnak as your top line. Zacha shifting from center through the wing. On the second line, of course, you have, Brad Marchand on the left side. Centers could be interchangeable. You may have Matthew Poitras playing on the second line with Charlie Coyle playing on the third line with Trent Frederic. And then on the right side, it's to be determined. Morgan Geekie perhaps could play there. Maybe Trent Frederic takes a spot in the top six and becomes a guy that develops or becomes kind of Jake DeBrusk 2.0. I don't think Justin Brazeau is quite a top six forward at this point. So the other option internally is to promote a young gun, and the obvious contender is our boy Fabian Lysell. He's a right winger, 21 years old, first round pick just a few years ago, 2021. He was picked 21st overall, and he has shown that he probably belongs in the NHL at this point. And really at this point in his trajectory, it would be kind of disappointing if he is not on the NHL roster come opening night. Now, if you look back at the 2021 NHL draft, there are several players drafted after Lysell who have made impacts at the NHL level, most notably Wyatt Johnston with the Dallas Stars. He's got 106 points in 164 games. There's also Matthew Nyes, JJ Moser, who were drafted in the second round. Lysell, one of only a handful of players drafted in the top 21 yet to really make an impact at the NHL level. You have Tyler Boucher, who was drafted 10th overall that year, has yet to make his NHL debut. Sebastian Casa with Detroit, although he's a goalie, so you can't really count them in the same breath. Chaz Lucius and Fedor Svechkov, drafted by the Jets and the Predators, respectively, I should say, at 18th and 19th overall. Jesper Wallstedt, another goalie drafted immediately before Lysell. Everybody else has at least played one game at the NHL level. So Lysell, I think, is primed to at least contend for that top 6 spot on the right side here this coming training camp. And I would be disappointed if he doesn't at least start the season with the Bruins. Now, there's always some flexibility there. Perhaps if they just decide that he's not quite ready, maybe they can send him back down, give him a bit more seasoning. But how much more do you need after a couple of years already down in the AHL? He's got 110 games of AHL experience. He's got 87 points in those 110 games. He was on track to be recalled by the Bruins if he had not been injured late last season. And for me, it should be Marchand, Coyle, Lysell, maybe Marchand, Patra, Lysell, but you probably don't want to put those two young guys together. Maybe spread them out. Go Marchand, Coyle, Lysell, and then Frederick with Patra and Geeky as kind of a versatile third line. That is the easy choice for your top 6, and that is why, well, partly why they have not yet signed an additional free agent up front. They signed Max Jones, Riley Tufte. Those guys aren't playing in the top 6, barring a miracle, and they're not really suited for the right side anyways. Max Jones is a left winger, as is Riley Tufte. So neither of those guys are going to jump in and play top 6 right wing. Maybe you have Trent Frederick, but he is a left-hand shot, of course, as was Jake DeBrusk. He did play with Bergeron and Marchand for a time, but these guys are more depth forwards. You need some scoring up there. You need some pop. This was one of the big reasons why the Bruins lost to the Panthers, was not their defense per se, not goaltending especially, but scoring struggles. And they need someone to really pop, especially after losing DeBrusk and Heinen. Now, DeBrusk had his inconsistencies. He's not a guy who is going to score each and every night. It's a tough ask to have Lysell come in there and do that, but he could very well come in and score 15, 20 if everything goes well for the Boston Bruins. A lot of pressure to put on him to come in and jump up to the top 6 and make an immediate impact, but the opportunity's there, and hopefully he is up to it as training camp begins here in a couple of months, and that's something to keep an eye on. So that's one thing. What's more likely? A young gun, a free agent, PTO, or trade? Well, the most likely thing right now is that Lysell will get a shot at that role. Now, if that fails, will they look at other options? That's a distinct possibility, and we'll discuss that more here as the podcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car an MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And while you're on YouTube, check out Locked On Sports Today. All the latest news, analysis, and opinions from across the Locked On universe. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, free on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So let's say Fabian Lysell doesn't jump up and grab that top 6 spot. Or let's say the Bruins finally sign Jeremy Swayman and find that they have some money left over. Do they invest that in a scoring winger? And there are a few still available on the free agent market. And the guy that I would have my eye on is Daniel Sprong. He had a $2 million deal last year with the Detroit Red Wings. He's age 27, a right-hand shot, and he had 18 goals, 25 assists for 43 points in 76 games last season for the Red Wings. If they can sign him to a similar contract, he could provide great value for the Boston Bruins in their top 6, playing alongside, say, Marchand. And the thing with signing a veteran to play in that spot is that you could, and I talked about this earlier, you could possibly put Matt Poitras with Marchand and a veteran winger instead of having him on the third line with Frederic and Geekie. You could have a line of Marchand, Poitras, and a veteran to kind of insulate the center, give him some veteran experience on the wings instead of having Poitras and Lysell together in the top 6. I mean, you could do that without signing someone by going, say, Marchand, Poitras, Geekie, and then Frederic, Coyle, Lysell. You can mix up the middle 6 that way. Again, this is assuming that the top line is set with Lindholm, Zacha, and Pastrnak. Other free agent possibilities include Tyler Johnson. You could sign him on the cheap. He had 17 goals in 67 games last season with the Chicago Blackhawks. We all know his history as a big game performer with the Tampa Bay Lightning during one of their earlier Stanley Cup runs. There's also Kailer Yamamoto, who's available. Filip Zadina, who's available. These are guys that maybe you don't have to sign right away, but could be coming in as PTO options come training camp. So there are options out on the free agent market. Guys who can shoot from the right side and who could put the puck in the net. Who else is available? You have Yamamoto, I mentioned. Jeff Carter is an option as a veteran free agent, but I believe he's leaning towards retirement. The guys that I would be looking at for sure would be Daniel Sprong is your number one option. Filip Zadina as a low risk, potentially high reward guy. He walked away from that deal with the Red Wings a couple years ago, bet on himself. Maybe San Jose isn't the best place to do so. Maybe you come to Boston, you play with countrymen in Zacha and Pastrnak, and you get your juices going there, playing in on a much better roster than San Jose and in a better opportunity to thrive. You have Alex Nylander, who's available. He had 11 goals in 28 games last season. Playing with Columbus, he looked pretty good there later on. I was shocked that they did not qualify him. He could be a good buy low candidate for the Bruins as well. So there are options out on the open market that they could possibly look at if they're not convinced that one of Lysell or maybe Merkulov jumping up and grabbing a middle 6 spot, and you simply put Morgan Geekie on the top side. But in my mind, I don't know if he's really a top six option. Are we convinced that that's the case? I'm not quite sure. If we look at guys who are right-hand shots and who play on the right side, your best bets are Sprong, maybe Yamamoto as a guy who could finally get it going. He only had 8 goals in 59 games with Seattle last year, but he did in the past put up, I think he had at least one 20-goal season with the Edmonton Oilers. And Zadina also as a guy who could also play the right side for the Boston Bruins. But I'm looking at Daniel Sprong as a guy who's just sitting there. And if the Bruins manage to sign Jeremy Swayman and have some cap space left over, he's a guy that I'd be looking at for sure. I think at this point, the priority is to get Jeremy Swayman signed and then see what else they could do. But the right side, the top 6, is clearly an area of need. And perhaps it's something that they address via trade later on in the season. And we'll discuss that option here as the podcast continues. The sports are not sportsing as they used to. Am I right? NHL, NBA seasons are over. It's pretty much just Major League Baseball as the primary daily sport right now. Not as many options, but FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want all summer long. All you have to do is open their app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with boosts or bonuses daily. All you have to do is visit their app, go to FanDuel.com, and check out what they have available all summer long every day. For example, today, Red Sox betting odds. The over-under for tonight's game against the Oakland A's is set at an even 10 runs. So go to FanDuel.com, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, and start making the most out of your summer. We know that general manager Don Sweeney is not adverse to making trades during the season. And I've said before, there are a few points where you evaluate your roster after free agent signings, at opening day, and then, of course, around the trade deadline, if there's any injuries, if someone's been put on LTIR and you have some free up cap space, then you can look to improve. Of course, Boston, they don't have the deepest prospect pool to deal from. They will have their first round pick in 2025 if they decide to go that route. They will not have a second or a fourth round pick next season, but they do have their first and a third that they could possibly deal from here if they want to improve at the trade deadline in 2025. There's also some potential UFAs next summer that they could look to flip, but the big guys, they're not going to do so in Brad Marchand and Trent Frederick. Could they try to package a Georgi Merkulov? They're not going to trade Patra, likely not trading Lysell. They're not trading Mason Lohrei. Those are your core prospects moving forward. Lohrei, Patra, Lysell. Otherwise, yeah, anything could be in play for the Bruins at the trade deadline, and that is certainly where they may look to add. Look, the Bruins, every year people come into the season expecting them to take steps backwards. Last year was a transition season. They were able to more than stay afloat. This summer, they added in Lindholm and Zadorov. And, Zadorov even said he came to Boston because he believes they give him a chance to win a Stanley Cup over the time that he'll be in Boston over the next 6 years. So if they are in the thick of the playoff race, look like they're maybe 1 or 2 pieces away, why not? Go for it. There's no reason to sit back. And I could easily see Don Sweeney making a move prior to the trade deadline to improve here on the right side and improve in the top 6 to add a bona fide top 6 option. Now, who that could be? Well, there's a bunch of players who will be unrestricted free agents next summer and who could perhaps be available in terms of possible rentals. So there's any number of options. Maybe Ottawa doesn't live up to expectations and they look to move Claude Giroux. Maybe who else could be available? Maybe Brock Besser is not going to re-sign in Vancouver. Maybe you look to grab him on a rental or trade for him and see if you can hook him up in your top 6 moving forward. There's other guys who will be coming free agents next summer that you could look at. Travis Konechny would be a great addition for sure. Riley Smith will be coming off the books in New York. Maybe you look to add him. There's going to be a ton of options in the trade market, and we all know that Don Sweeney is not adverse to doing that. Those are just some early names as I look at Puckpedia, which is our primary reference point now that Cap Friendly has RIP'd on us. So what is more likely? Well, the most likely thing at this point is that Fabian Lysell will be given every opportunity to grab that spot on the right side, whether it's in the top 6 or on the third line with Morgan Geekie going up. That is the most likely thing to happen at this point. Once they sign Jeremy Swayman, hopefully they'll have a bit leftover cash that they can maybe sign a free agent or offer a guy a PTO to have some more competition built in training camp. You don't want to just hand it to Lysell. You want him to earn it. So that is the secondary option. And then, of course, if they're not able to add someone in free agency, if they're not able to get the most out of Fabian Lysell right away, then maybe they explore, because regardless, we all can acknowledge that there's a big hole in the Bruins top 6 and there is a need for more scoring on this roster. So hopefully Lysell can live up to his billing as a offensively gifted first round pick and show that enough defensive responsibility to crack the NHL roster, and he can run with it. Hey, take that job, run with it, make yourself a Calder candidate. If not, maybe Sprong will still be an option once Swayman is signed, and then we'll have to assess later on in the season what the options could be in the trade market. Let me know what you think. What's more likely here? Do we think Lysell is going to pop? There are other options out there that I'm missing. Let me know in the YouTube comments or at Locked NHL Bruins or Ian C. McLaren. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll be back here tomorrow with a brand new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single